A week or so ago on Twitter, someone posted a picture of a selection of Ladybird books. You know the type, like those classic ones, some may call them vintage, the type that people of a certain generation grew up with. Now these books all had one thing in common: they featured people from history. And the tweet asked, which one would you choose? The books featured people like Elizabeth Fry, Charles Dickens, and Joan of Arc, to name but a few. And there, nestled in amongst them, complete with a winged helmet, was a picture of King Alfred the Great, whose feast day we celebrate today. Well, I wonder what you know about King Alfred. Well, one thing's for sure, he certainly wouldn't make the Great British Bake Off the way he burnt the cakes, would he? Maybe you're picturing that famous statue of the King of Wessex in Winchester. Alfred was born in 849 AD, the son of a ruling king of Wessex, one of the small kingdoms that eventually became England. As he had 3 older brothers, it was unlikely that he would ever be king, except that he lived when the Vikings were invading. Alfred's father died while defending the kingdom, as did those 3 older brothers. And while Alfred was king, the country was overrun, and yet he survived, for a time living in the forests. He earned the title the Great by raising his countrymen and fighting back. But he also earned it by what he did afterwards, for Alfred drew scholars from across the land to re-establish learning and religion in his kingdom. He studied key works and helped translate some, including Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People. All in all, Alfred did seem to be a pretty great medieval king, but perhaps a little odd for a saint. He helped revive Christian learning in England, as well as working on translations of important work into English. Alfred was known as being extremely devout and knowledgeable about Christian history and tradition. That said, as king, his main role was the defence and right rule of his people. So why was he made a saint? Well, maybe that leads us back to the question, what is a saint? I think it's all too easy for us to think of saints as being extremely holy people who sit around all day praying. But the reality is they were often very active people. Holy and good they may have been, but they did not shy away from life, especially a life of pain, suffering and sacrifice for those around them. And it's this goodness, this saintliness, if you will, that can occur in any walk of life, both because God is there, present in any walk of life, the good bits and the challenging times. And no matter where we are, we always need God. And from his deep love of humanity, God sends people into some of earth's darkest places to shine and to reflect God's love. Now, Alfred was born at a time of crisis, and as king he fulfilled his duty. He fought for his people, he worked for peace where he could, and he sought to nurture people. He went above and beyond what the world called him to do, all the time keeping his focus on God and listening to his call. You know, we live in a very different time. We are called to wear face coverings or masks, but we are not expected to wear the winged helmet. We may occasionally burn cakes, but we can turn to Alfred and his example to listen to what God is calling us to do through our day-to-day lives, in our work, with our family, and in our witness to this community. For God is ever with us, and God calls us to a life rooted and founded upon Christ. I wonder, how will you bring God's light and love into your life and workplace and community today?